It's been nearly 3 decades since 9 crazy metalheads put on those iconic jumpsuits and made metal history. Now in a new conversation with the Batteline Podcast, Corey Taylor is opening up about what it takes to make it work in a band for that long despite having very different personalities. He also talked about the challenges of being a father while also touring around the world. It was a very cool discussion. I've linked to the full conversation, the link in the description. Now, Corey recently released his latest single, Beyond, from his upcoming record, CMF2. I think it's very catchy. Check it out if you haven't heard from it yet. He also has a tour that he recently announced with those solo performances. Before we continue, if you are new to Rockfeed, for the latest news and updates about your favorite bands, hit that subscribe button with notifications on. And I want to let you know you've got a very cool opportunity to go to one of these amazing festivals with 4 VIP weekend passes to one of these festivals of your choosing. I think you have a great chance of winning. You could go see Limp Bizkit and Incarceration. What more do you want? You could go see the Foo Fighters. Enter to win at the link in the description. Corey spoke to the Batteline Podcast and he opened up about a number of these subjects, including what it takes to make Slipknot work for such a long period of time. He said, I think about it a lot because there are definitely times when we don't get along, but there are definitely times where we would lay down our lives for each other. But I think that just comes down to human nature. No one's always going to get along. There are going to be times where something is going to get said and someone is going to rub somebody the wrong way. As long as you know that and you're aware of how to fix it and aware that that feeling is temporary, it's not permanent. I mean, it has to be fuck you kind of a moment for that kind of stuff to go to hell. For us, we've always allowed ourselves to get away from each other. It's one of the reasons why I do so many different projects, man. And I think that's allowed us to kind of reconnect over the years. Some of us didn't necessarily start out as friends, but we have come to love each other as brothers over the years. And obviously, we've experienced the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And when we felt a disconnect, instead of it breaking us up, it has 100% made us stronger, which if you had told me that 20 years ago, I would have fucking laughed. Just because I know how gnarly this camp is. But at the same time, man, when I had my spinal surgery, the first person who called me was Sid. When things went down in our lives, the first people to reach out were people in Slipknot. And I've never forgotten that, man, even as bad as I can be. And I can be just as guilty as anybody, man, of disconnecting, of taking things the wrong way, of just being an asshole. Those guys have always let me know at the right moment that they care and that I may not have talked this time, but if I need to talk next time, they're there. And sometimes just knowing that can repair so many bridges and heal so much, dude. I'm not always the best friend. I'm not always the best band member, bandmate. I'm not always the best leader. But sometimes the best leaders know that. And the part of being the best leader means realizing you don't always have the best idea and you delegate and you distribute. The teams that win are the ones that know how to put the ball in the strongest person's hands to make sure that person in that moment gets the job done. And that to me, that means knowing that sometimes I don't have to worry about having all the answers. I can let my team help me. And as long as I'm there to make sure that it all goes right, that's what it's all about. And maybe that's the secret, man. We all trust each other when it comes to do what we do in the band, and they all trust me when it comes to what I do on stage, which is why when we do shows, I run it like that, and they trust me just to keep the show going. And naturally, when you are in one of the biggest metal bands on the planet, unfortunately, that's going to take you away from home for extended periods of time as you tour around the world. And Corey talked about how important it is to him to be a great father and how that has been challenging at times when you are away from your family for extended periods of time. Speaking on the challenges of raising his son Griffin, who is now the frontman of the rising metal band called Vended, he said, my son, I didn't have to help him with anything, but he's out on the road with his band and they're killing it. And that's the thing that's brought he and I even closer, man, because now he really, really gets it. And we talk now more than we ever have, which to me, it's beautiful. There were definitely a couple years when it was difficult, and part of me can just be human nature. Part of that can be the fact that I was gone for giant chunks of his early life. It also didn't help that the relationship I was in before my marriage now was very toxic. It was very hard on him, and in a lot of ways he blamed me, which he has every right to, because at the time I didn't realize how bad it was. He and I have always been tight. He's my boy, and we've always had a very special bond. When his mother and I split up, I was all he had for a long time. So when I was on the road, I would have to have a caretaker take care of him so he could go to school. And when I would come home, and we would just kind of pick up from there. but you never got that rhythm. So I was constantly having to relearn who he was, because every time I'd come back, he was different. Once he got older, there was definitely a push back and forth, because he was starting to kind of come into his own. And between the anger that he had for missing so much and the anger from the previous issues and the anxiety that had sprung up in his life because of my Midwestern way of being a father, which is to raise your voice and it doesn't matter why, I want to, all that shit, it was tough. So we butted heads for a few years, man. And then one year, everything just kind of clicked, man, and we both looked at each other in a very different way, and we were able to really kind of reconcile. Not that it was ever really bad. It was weird enough that I was really like, man, I'm going to lose him. You never give up. It takes being brutally honest with yourself, going, I made mistakes. You are never going to be the perfect father. You love to think that we're just doing it for our own good, and sometimes, guess what? Those universal ways of parenting didn't always work. And for me, realizing that maybe I contributed to some of his anxiety hurt. So I had to relearn how to be a parent, man. I had to relearn how to talk to my kid. And then I realized that he's not a baby anymore, man. He's going to be 21 this year. It's been easier for me to talk to him as an adult than it was when he was younger, because I had no skill set as a father like that. So it's been tough. But I'll tell you what, the lessons that I've learned, not only have I been able to apply to my youngest daughter, I've also applied to people in my life and how I communicate with other people. You can't just explode. You have to create a conversation. You have to develop a dialogue, because it's the only way people are going to be able to A, understand you, B, not resent or fear you. And those two things are the death knell for any relationship. And again, Corey's son, Griffin, is the frontman of the band Vended. I really like this band. They remind me of early era Slipknot, but they're doing their own thing at the same time. And what I think is really cool about them, having gotten to talk to a couple of those guys in the band, is that they're really road warriors right now. If you look at their touring schedule, they are touring all over the country, really paying their dues on their own. They're not out here, touring sporadically. They've pretty much been touring just about nonstop for the last year, and they're really out here trying to make their own way in metal, and I just think that's so cool, and I'd love to have them on the channel at some point. And it's so cool to see, Corey talking about being a father, and he seems like a great dad, and it's got to be really special for him to see how things are turning out for his son and his band and everything like that. And it's just like, that's the stuff that really matters in life, and it's cool to hear him kind of describe that, and he's very much aware of all of that, and it's just really cool to see that. There's just that's what really matters, and it's just awesome. So Corey's album CMF2 is going to be releasing in September of this year. The new song Beyond is out now, and you can visit his website because he recently announced a massive North American solo tour, and you don't want to miss that. That's your latest update from Rockfeed. Again, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and check out the recommended video up on your screen and join the conversation over on Instagram.